Hey guys, I'm Shaft with Polygon Gaming, and welcome to the next episode of Crash Course. This is part number 2, and I want to clarify a little bit from the last video before we move on to the next video, because there was really 2 points that either you guys didn't understand or maybe I didn't explain so well, so I'd like to start with that. First of all, the title of the last video was, or included 211 all in. That doesn't, in my opinion, mean that all 211s are all in, but rather that we were specifically looking for the all-in forms of 211, which is like a wider group of builds. Not all 211s are all in, but some can be. So with that distinguished, the other thing that people might have been a little bit confused about was the Triforce model. The Triforce model isn't like supposed to categorize this build as being economic and that build being tech, like the whole build. No. It's only supposed to be like 1 minute compared to the next minute compared to the next minute. I hope that makes a little bit more sense when we're going into this, but I want to hop right into the next game with a caveat. The next game has a low-level Masters player in it, so not all the gameplay is perfect. However, I feel like my audience is probably around Diamond or below. So this would probably look more like your games than if I showed you like perfect gameplay. I would show you perfect gameplay, but unfortunately a lot of replays aren't being released right now from tournaments and such. So this is what I could get my hands on. This is the best job I could do. You have my word on that. And if you happen to be an event organizer and you aren't a fan of releasing replays, please, I beg you, we as a community need replays. Just throwing that out there, but let's go right into this game. Alright, so this is the beginning of any good 2-on-1, around 3 to 4 minutes, somewhere in between there. You do want to do a little bit of scouting, just to see what your opponent's going to be throwing at you, and as you see here from Snow, he's getting a pretty good read on everything. Let's take a look right here. Now let's just assume for a second he didn't see that second barracks. He did, so obviously he knows this is 2-on-1. This is an exact structure of 2-on-1. 2 gas, 1 tech lab, 1 reactor, 1 factory, 2 barracks, 1 starport. This is 2-on-1. But if you see a barracks with tech lab to get stim pack, and specifically if you see it moving, as you can actually see, hold on, I'll show you. See that little bubble? Yeah, that tells you it's researching something. More often than not in today's meta, that is going to be stim pack. But if you just see a barracks with a tech lab, you can almost guarantee that this is going to be a stim pack timing, especially once you're past like Silver League. Before then, maybe, you know, builds, no one uses them. The one thing Snow doesn't do in this replay that I really wish he would is send a Ling right along in here and scout these 2. He knows 2 gas have already been taken. If he could see a third, he would know whether this is a tank form of 2-on-1. Almost always you'll see a third gas a little bit quicker to get the tank out that much faster. Around 4.5 minutes is a really essential timing when it comes to 2-on-1. You'll see at this point most Terran are going to begin walling off. This particular map has a wider ramp, so even though he doesn't need the depots, you see him right now going ahead and building them anyway, and as well as a bunker. The reason for this are Ling Baneling timing attacks at this timing are super effective. So around the time that the medevacs pick up, which is approximately 5 minutes, they'll pick the Marines up, and you want to give them enough time to make it a little bit past the map so that they have to make a choice. Do they go home and defend, or do they continue their drop and potentially all in? So Ling Baneling timing here is huge, or just Ling's little harassment. You have all kinds of options. Just throwing that out there. And this is a very standard timing for the Marines to be moving across the map. As you can see, he's not going straight into the main. He's not trying to do that kind of damage. And in fact, this turns out to be the correct play. As you can see, about 42 Lings are on the field right now. That's 21 drones not made yet. So this would be the appropriate reaction to something with maybe 3 tech labs like we saw in part 1. However, this is a slightly more economic form. This will use more of the Widow Mines as a pivot unit, so it will be somewhere in the middle. It's not quite as economic as something that skips the pivot unit entirely. However, it's much more effective than something that did skip the pivot unit. However, it's not quite as committed as you would expect from a tank build. And at this point, he has scouted the fact that all of these Lings have been produced, so he's just going to take the high ground, hold a little map control, and get a little effectiveness out of these Marines. There's a nice stem pack. He's going to kill as many lings as he can. He's already killed 4, and those lings are bleeding. So he killed 14 lings total. That's essentially 7 drones killed. Or, you know, the 21 drones that could have been made. Either way you want to look at that, he's done more damage by not attacking the mineral line than he probably would have if he had attacked the mineral line. And that's just by Snow overmaking drones. So it begs the question, why did Snow go and overmake, overmake drones, overmake lings? Why did he do it? He feels like he's the better player. I know for a fact Snow tends to kind of go into a ladder game with that presumption, and this is a ladder game after all. So he's playing the safe card, and he'll get his advantages later. But right this moment, a quick glance right here at the worker count, definitely the Terrans lead. Now, one question might be, why are these Marines just sitting here? Why aren't they actually doing anything? Why aren't they on creep killing anything? Well, quite frankly, they can't. There's too many lings. He doesn't want to attack until his Marines are actually completely healed. But look at where these Marines are positioned. Here's where the lings are and the queens. Queens can't come off creep. Lings maybe can. Here's the Marines. But what's happening over here? Between the lings and this Overlord camp is a huge pack of Marines. And this Overlord is being hunted by Marines. So with these Marines being out, this kind of delayed tactic play, a lot of just the choices being made here by the Terran are telling us this is more of an economic build. So if you see tactics like this being employed, feel a little bit safer. Around 6:10, we see the Baneling Nest completing. The Baneling Nest makes a huge difference when it comes to using lings and banelings to shove the Terran off of creep. Before banelings, the lings can do that little bit of bleeding off the lings, do as much damage as possible till Stimpack's done, pick up, heal, and essentially lose only 1 or 2 Marines. With banelings, that's no longer an option. Also around 6 minutes, you really want to go ahead and scout with an Overlord. This is when typically you'd see the tanks or anything else like that coming out. He is still seeing no tech labs, so that can't be tanks. He is seeing some barracks getting added on, so he knows that right now his opponent is starting to commit to a little bit more of aggression. He saw the pickup, he saw everything he needed to see right there. And he also sees that there is a 3rd base in production. So now that he's aware of that, the Terran has to change things up. So he's going to become a little more aggressive. He knows the banelings are going to be completing here shortly, so he's just going to do that last little bit of damage possible, and if possible get some queens, because stemmed Marines wreck queens, and maybe even get some creep tumors. And as you can see, this is a huge number of lings. A lot of these Marines getting cleaned up. Only 5 Marines have been killed though for this whole drop. You see their corpses there. Pretty nice. Really good saves here by our Terran player. This will not happen again. Banelings are going to be on the field shortly. So right here around 6.5 minutes, we've got the Marines pulling back. There's the second set of drop ships coming on along, and this time we've got the Widow. So at this point, that's why the scout was at 6 minutes. At this point, we've got the pivot units coming out. Pivot units are so important in this matchup. That's really what these videos are all about, is the importance of utilizing your pivot units properly. Wow, that was a mouthful. And this is unfortunate right here. This Widow Mine should not be leading the pack. You can see how easily the Marines are able to start taking damage from these lings. The proper move here is to have this Widow Mine here. That's a good spot. The Marines retreat back up here. Maybe have another Widow Mine here. Boom. Retreat into the Widow Mine path. So a little bit sloppy here by our low-level Masters Terran. But that's okay. Mistakes like this happen in the highest level of gameplay. But you're going to see a lot of these kinds of mistakes in your own gameplay. So this right here, this is what you're going to be capitalizing on. And guess what? Even though I'm calling this a mistake, I call it a mistake because it could be game ending. As you can see, the Terran is clearly winning this battle and is going to get a lot of this creep spread cleaned up. Doesn't quite get the queens, but this creep spread's super important. He does get some overlords, but he's a little bit greedy on the overlords. You see how deep he's diving in here? He really wants to be clearing out the wider area. Getting this deep on creep, very dangerous. And again, Widowmine not required in position, and you see the Marines getting cleaned up. Very nasty. Now, I could go through and show you guys exactly how badly Snow is able to punish this sort of thing, or I can just throw the best parts of the game up behind me and talk to you guys about the theme. I think that's going to be the best use of our time. So, really, this game comes all the way down to map control, and map control, of course, comes in the form of your army. So, when you make more army units, according to the Triforce model, especially going into the mid-game, you're gaining map control. And map control is most important in the mid and late game, less so early on. That's why the Triforce model is minute by minute, because it can change whatever your emphasis is at any given time. So let's talk a little bit about why map control is important and why it's important to have a stronger army as a Terran in the mid-game. Well, first of all, there's huge economic advantages to Zerg having map control. The Zerg wants map control because he's able to take more bases, produce more drones, and continue to spread his creep without it being punished through scans, cleaning it up, or killing off the queens. Remember, with the medevac drops we constantly saw, those are designed to destroy creep. Once you've got map control as a Zerg, you can tech to your heart's content. Once you feel safe against all the drops and you've got that defensively covered, as well as holding map control with your creep spread, you're in the perfect place to go ahead and tech the Hive. Once you're at Hive, you get the Ultra Cavern, and before you get Ultras, remember to get chitinous plating. Ultras just aren't the same without it. And Terran has to prevent this. That's the whole reason 2-1-1 is a thing. That's the reason it exists, is it allows constant aggression between 5 and 10 minutes. 10 minutes is usually the earliest Ultra Cavern you can get. So the goal here is to delay that just by constantly forcing the Zerg to make units, particularly gas units. Now, our Terran is slightly bad at macro. We talked about how he was a little bit of a weaker player, but even with his bad macro, some of the same themes will apply to his build. Now, we could assume that he doesn't hit 800 minerals. Maybe he has more Marines in some of these pushes, or whatever. Maybe, he pushes and it looks a little bit different. But with the amount of units that Snow had, because Snow prepared for a player who was a little bit better than his opponent, Snow still would have won that engagement. So let's just talk about the themes rather than the relative player skills, because again, this is for lower level players, diamond or below or so. So this could definitely be a game you see yourself in. The economy is great on this build. This build actually got an earlier third at the cost of later reactors. So even if the macro wasn't a little bit subpar, the later reactors means less army at the benefit of more tech. So in our Triforce model, we can already see the colors starting to shade themselves appropriately. The army is still pretty good. The macro makes it a little bit worse. Later reactors makes it a little bit worse. But it's still good, even with this kind of macro, but it would still be good with perfect macro. The tech, on the other hand, is bad, and this comes back to the argument of more versus different. More units require perfect macro. If you're literally relying on the same units for the majority of the game, the first 10 minutes, which is exactly what 2-1-1 does, then you're not going to get advantages through tactical options that the different option allows. Instead, it's going to rely 100% on whether or not you are macroing perfectly. So it's a little bit harder to do 2-1-1 properly, and that presents opportunities for Zerg. Terran tech, after all, is limited to the 2-2 upgrades, and by the way, if you look at the infrastructure, this 2-2 is later than the 2-2 in the next game we're going to look at. So this tech is even weaker than some other 2-1-1s. So that's important to realize. This also has stem, combat shields, and Widow Mines are the highest tech unit in the composition. A low army diversity is actually why Ultras are so good at the moment. It's why it's a thing. There's no tanks, Thors, Marauders really aren't that big at this moment. It'll become a thing later. Libs will become a thing later, but those are more reactions as opposed to preemptive, and that's just not quite the same. Anyways, that means the Terran is going to have to constantly trade Marines for economic damage or map control. Less Marines means more economics for the Zerg and more map control for the Zerg. So the more Marines you have to trade for those things, the less the Zerg can tech. But with map control, Zerg punishes Terran expansions, takes his own, gets his technology up, and is in a great position. It is on the Terran to do the damage in these situations. The next game we're going to look at actually goes for a later third, faster reactors, and is able to get a higher SCV count because of it. He also gets 2-2 quite a bit faster and is therefore able to trade more efficiently. So by putting less emphasis on the army and economic side of things, he is helping his tech quite a bit. And that's really the balance in 2-1-1, is that you have to balance your own tech and staying ahead, getting that 3-3 as fast as possible, because again, Marines are really all you got, compared to just going for that super greedy and winning with raw, sheer, massive numbers. Sometimes it's better to be more effective than more numerous. Thanks for joining me for part 2 of this series, guys. We do have part 3 coming out next Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Please make sure you like and subscribe to this channel just by clicking the Polygon shield here on screen to make sure you get that video. And if you like this content, then feel free to check out some of our other videos, maybe our first 2-1-1 video or any other of your choosing. I've got a couple of my favorites right here on screen for you. Thank you so much, guys. I am Shaft with Polygon Gaming, and if you're interested in joining Polygon Gaming, guess what? We are recruiting. We're a team of content creators who focus primarily on establishing community relationships and running events. If you are interested in either of those things, content creation, writing, graphics design, administration, or even just managing a team, this could be the perfect spot for you. So if you're interested in something like that, please leave a comment here in the diddly-doo down here below, just saying you're interested. I will personally give you my Skype because I know a lot of people don't like putting their information out there, so I'll put mine out there. I really appreciate you guys watching this video. I put a lot of work into it. I honestly was not expecting to get 3 videos out of it. It's pretty much over an hour of content on 2-1-1 openers, and if not for you guys liking and upvoting this on Reddit and leaving comments and just your overall positive encouragement, honestly, guys, I would have quit this a long time ago. So I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys appreciate what we do here on this channel. If you do, please visit on Patreon. It's also on the screen. Donate just $1 a month. It goes so far, you have no idea. We're going to be setting up some awesome rewards for Patreon here in the near future, so please feel free to check that out. Thank you so much, guys.